All right, great. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome again to another webinar, AVAIL webinar. This month, we've actually had two webinars this month, which is kind of irregular for us. We had a webinar earlier this month around using AI techniques to generate key cards and channel cards for AVAIL. This time around, we're focusing on CAD. We're focusing on AutoCAD support, Civil 3D support. And we are very excited to introduce and showcase three customers who are going to be part of our guest panel to talk about how they are going about implementing some of this AutoCAD functionality, some of these workflows into AVAIL and across their teams, which will be great. So we're going to kick things off. I'll introduce myself. My name is Clay Watson. I'm the Director of Customer Success at AVAIL. I'm joined here by Rob Snyder. He's our Customer Success Manager. So we're here to support our customers, support their workflows, and help them kind of strategize and kind of brainstorm how best to set up a platform that instills success across their teams. And I think these webinars, especially when we've got customers talking about these kind of things and how they're implementing it, I think it's going to be really impactful, which I'm very excited about our guests today. So looking at our agenda for this webinar, I'm going to start off, I'm going to give you kind of an AVAIL overview. I always like to start really kind of talking about our core principles around AVAIL, why use AVAIL, what makes us different, what makes us stand out. And then I'm going to talk about a little bit on the how-to of how to use this kind of new AutoCAD Civil 3D functionality. So we've got a brand new add-in for AutoCAD and Civil 3D, and it works hand in hand with our AVAIL desktop. So I'm going to show just kind of the basic setup of how you can get that up and running and working, and then just some of the value that you can get from this. What are some of the key features, some of the key takeaways that are beneficial from these workflows that we've added. Our guest panels, I'm going to be turning this over, so it'll be a little bit of training. I'll be talking just a little bit, but instead of me going on and on about all the different buttons and things, I'm going to let our guest panelists speak about their stories and their outcomes and their strategies using this technology. So we've selected three firms who are kind of, early adopters of this AutoCAD and Civil 3D functionality. And so they are all in like various stages, right, of rolling this out to their team. So I think they're going to bring really unique perspectives and hopefully share some strategies that help any of you on the call as well. Maybe if you're thinking about having these same internal discussions with your CAD teams, how are we going to go about managing the content, right? Where do we get started? What do we do to get this into AVAIL and really see the value for our team? So I'm going to let them kind of talk about this in the back half and kind of the majority of today's webinar. But we're going to be joined by Mead and Hunt, Larson Design, and LPA Design Studios. And then, we're going to have a kind of a panel discussion. So they're going to be talking about their stories, their strategies, their outcomes, and we will be opening up for Q&A. So as I'm talking, right, about these features and functionality, as our guest panelists are speaking about some of their strategies and implementation, feel free to post your questions. There is a Q&A section where you can add those questions as they come about. And then at the end of the webinar, we're going to be wrapping things up and reviewing those questions, answering them live, and kind of providing some feedback there. And then we'll have a few announcements at the very end to wrap things up as well. All right, cool. So to start things off, if you are brand new to AVAIL, you've never heard of it, and you just downloaded AVAIL, maybe you're wondering why is AVAIL different? What makes it stand out than other content management solutions out there? So we've really kind of built ourselves around two kind of guiding principles. One is that we are file type agnostic. So what that means is that all of these logos, all these file types that you see on the screen and more are all supported through AVAIL. So it kind of really emphasizes today's topic is that we are not just Revit focused. We're AutoCAD focused. You can house your DWGs, you can house PDFs, you can house or index Word documents, Excels, PowerPoints, any type of file that goes around a project that lives and is necessary as a project asset can be indexed and can be searchable in AVAIL. So that kind of really breaks this out. We're file type agnostic. Any type of file can be supported and hosted in AVAIL. The second core principle is that we're file location agnostic. So we sit on top of your current folder structure, your current network, wherever that is, however it's organized. You don't have to really change anything about where that's located, that storage solution that you've got. We just kind of sit on top of that as we kind of like to talk about it as like a single pane of glass, right? We're sitting on top of this folder structure, your network, where this content lives and resides, and then we're giving you a visual interface, a searchable interface to surface some of this content that can get buried very quickly. The longer you've got a folder structure in place, the more subfolders, the more directories that are going to get built out and expand. Avail's a way to kind of surface some of these things with really great visuals, really great search, and just really easy to navigate and find those assets a little bit faster and get them into your project. So those are the big two core components. So core principles: file type agnostic, file location agnostic. So when we talk about AutoCAD and Civil 3D, so this is still a relatively new functionality with Avail. We've always kind of we've always supported DWG files and things like that. You could bring them into Avail, but it's never been as seamless as we've got with our Revit plugin. So if you're familiar with the Revit workflows in Avail, we've got our own like project navigator in Revit. You get the ability to harvest container files in from Revit into Avail. So there's a lot of support there around those specific workflows. So we wanted to, bolster that a little bit more for AutoCAD and Civil 3D. We've got a lot more interest from customers. They've already got teams with this content, needing a way to organize and find solutions around managing this content. So we wanted to kind of build some of these things up, use kind of what we've been using with Revit as far as being able to harvest and create some really great previews and kind of a full text search capability. And so that's what we've done with AutoCAD and Civil 3D. We've kind of brought some of this functionality over. And then for Civil 3D specifically, we've also added this pipe network catalog support. So it's a way that you can standardize and centralize your pipe network catalogs, which can be difficult to manage and centralize. It can be something that can kind of be not erased, but it can kind of be difficult to find those, when you need them. And so I'm going to demo in a bit on how easy it is to kind of create those, set those up in our new add-in interface, and you can quickly load those depending on how many you've got. All right, so let me switch over. Before I talk about the benefits of Harvest, let me actually show you what this all means, right? So if you're familiar with our desktop application, this is where you're going to be creating channels. This is where you're going to create your libraries of content. And so here you can see at the very top, I've got a collection of specific AutoCAD files, right? So I've got some signage blocks, some furniture blocks, some entourage blocks, and these are all kind of where the content lives. And I've also created this channel group. And this is really where we're leaning on when we set up the add-in. So if I switch over to Civil 3D really quick, I'll kind of show you how the desktop mirrors the AutoCAD and vice versa. So here I've opened this kind of new file, new drawing in Civil 3D. I've got my add-in open. And here I've got this channel option. So these are the channels that I've actually mapped to AutoCAD. So we have a specific feature in our desktop called application mappings. And this is what you can do with your CAD specific channels and content, as you can create a group of channels and then map this to the add-in. And this is what displays for the end users. So this is only what they're interacting with. As you can see here, if I switch back to the desktop, I've got a lot of other channels, other types of content that's living in Avail. But for the add-in interface, they're only going to see what I've mapped specifically there. So it's a great way to kind of customize that look and feel. They're not it's not too noisy, right? There's not too much going on kind of how they're interfacing with the content. We've also added the ability to harvest. So in this regard, what you're looking at is the ability to harvest blocks. So if you've got a block library in place, you can open these blocks, you can select them, and you actually kind of extract them as individual blocks into Avail. And so what that does is through the harvest process, it makes it centralized. It standardizes those things in your Avail library. And they're also adding some full text search capability on those DWG views, right? So if you've got some drafted views that you've harvested out as blocks, You're going to be able to search for them, full text search capability. You're going to get a high res preview, and it's just going to be a lot better interface visually and much more easier to search for. So let me switch back over. Let me show you some of that output of Harvest. Um, and there's several different options you can have. You actually can control some of the insertion settings for these blocks as well, which we can touch on as well. But here is a great way. If you open up these previews, you've got this high res preview that you can open up right in the desktop. Again, this is something that I've harvested out from Civil 3D from a block library, but you don't actually need Civil 3D to actually open this and view it, which is also another benefit, is that you don't actually need the application. You can actually go in here, go to the library, and view these things even without Civil 3D or AutoCAD installed. Similar to what we do with Revit. We also have full text search capability across all of these views that you've been harvested. And so if we look at one, let's find a good example. Here's one for erosion. I'm going to back out and look at across all of my channels. I can cast a full text search. As you can see, erosion is not in that DWG file name, nor is it tagged that way, but it is in the text itself on the drafting view. So again, it's a huge advantage. It's an automated process. So there is some additional tagging that you can do on this content once it's brought into Avail, but this is all done on the back end as you harvest this out, and it's just a natural output to harvest. Okay, so to touch on the last little piece that I'd mentioned is managing pipe network catalogs. So through this add-in interface, yes, this is actually something that's specific to the add-in. There's nothing that you would have to do or maintain in the desktop, but this is something that you can go in and you can actually create you can create as many catalogs as you like, but it's a way that you can kind of, again, standardize these, centralize where these catalogs are located, and so that from the add-in interface, it's a way that you can just quickly go to this tab, go to the add-in, and quickly load these. And it's just going to kind of natively kind of bring up that prompt that you normally get from Civil 3D, but it's going to fill in all the blanks for you, the file location, all those kind of things, those loading details that are needed. So you can see here, I've already kind of gone in, I've structured this, I've created all the settings, given in the catalog a name. And so these are all the ways that you can just go in here, set these things up, and then they're immediately available to your teams as they kind of open and access the add-in. All right, cool. So as a recap, let me go back to my slides. So the big benefit there of this add-in capability is the ability to kind of harvest your block libraries, which is giving you so you'll be able to virtualize these blocks, which means you get high-res previews of those details. You've got full text search capability, and we've also done some additional automated tagging around block attributes. So if that block did have an attribute attached, we're actually doing some automated tagging so that you can search just like you would full text for full text searchability. You would be able to search for that attribute and it'd be kind of attached that content on the back end to make it searchable as well. All right, so those are the basics. I do want to point out one other thing in the desktop. If you are needing a refresh, right? If you want to kind of go back and kind of walk through this process, specifically around going through the harvest workflow, our learning channel is a great resource. This is something that we've updated recently. We've got some brand new kind of publisher-specific videos. These are short, quick tutorials to provide that refresh and kind of take you through the steps that can be a little more detailed, right? There's more clicks and more buttons and things to consider as you harvest. So I'm going to point that out here. We've got some additional setup. We have a specific setup video as well as a harvest specific video that you can check out. And again, they're going to be about 2 minutes a piece, so it's easy to digest. All right, cool. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to switch gears, and now we're going to talk. We're going to kind of open this up for the panel discussion and presentation. So I'd like to introduce Rebecca Yu from Mead and Hunt, Maya Mashiak from LPA Design, and Christine Palmisano from Larson Design. And again, we reached out to these firms because we were kind of looking at the data And they were kind of early adopters. They're kind of top users. They were in here. They're being active with the add-in. And I think they're going to each really have some great stories to tell and great perspective to share. So I've structured this very loosely, right? So I'm gonna give them some time to present and talk, and kind of showcase what they've the work that they've done and highlight, what kind of outcomes that they're trying to achieve. But to start things off, I'm gonna kind of go around to Rebecca, Christine, and Maya, and let's kind of lay down kind of the foundational level, right? Let's talk about your introduction to Avail, any kind of motivating factors to start considering using Avail. What was your kind of content? How did that CAD content live before Avail? And what kind of drove you to start to kind of engage with this new support, this new functionality? And Rebecca, I'll start with you, and tell a little bit about your background and story.
Sure. Welcome everyone. My name is Rebecca. I work for a company called Mead and Hunt. I'm their CAD manager for all things civil. Um, so we had been actually using Avail for several years, but all on the Revit side, for buildings. So we had all sorts of different channels, and I was always very jealous, frankly, of the buildings group getting to use Avail for quite a few years. And while yes, technically we could put the DWGs in there, we couldn't really, you didn't get the previews, and it wasn't that great, right? So we were just like, you know what? That's a buildings thing. Eventually we'll get to play with it too. And now, like the moment that we heard that there was going to be the tie-in, we were like, sign me up. Like
Yeah.
I'm ready. Like, I've been ready for years. Like yes, let's go. Um, so it was not hard for me to do that because I'd already seen the
Mhm.
value on the Revit side of things for that. So that's really where we came to it, or sort of our history behind that. So we were immediately starting to bring in, what sort of blocks do we have, details, all of that. Prior to that, our folders, our details were in a lot of folders,
Yeah.
as I think a lot of people probably are. There isn't a lot of other good options out there for things. So yeah, mostly we were, oh, grab that detail that worked, for the last project. Where there was an add-in that we had, within CAD to be able to do a search to be able to find a detail, but you sort of like you needed to have, a term that was part of the file name, and you needed to be searching in like the right folder in order to be able to find it. But there'd always be this, hey, does anyone know of a detail for this? Like
Mhm.
all that goes away when you bring everything in here and get things tagged appropriately. So we were
Yeah.
very happy to be able to start using this personally.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for that introduction. Maya, I'll turn it over to you. Kind of tell your intro to Avail and to kind of that initial journey.
Yeah, actually, mine was very similar to Rebecca's. In general, at LPA, we were using Avail for a long time, especially when it
Mhm.
came to Revit, BIM projects, even sourcing our Rhino.
Mhm.
Over time, our landscape team, actually, who works in Civil 3D, started picking up just the Avail for just UI, essentially, so they
Yeah.
can visualize what they were organizing.
Mhm.
And that was really the beginning to how we kind of started using Avail for Civil 3D.
Mhm.
When the add-in came out, it changed a little bit of how we were approaching our file and folder structure,
Mhm.
especially with both landscape and civil teams wanting to use it. We're very much still in the testing phase, but at least like we've been exploring content setup, harvesting, being able to run a harvest on multiple blocks as opposed to in tool palettes, when you have to do it manually, one at
Mhm.
a time. So yeah, that's a bit of our background here.
All right. Fantastic. And then Christine.
Yes, I'm Christine Palmisano here at Larson Design Group, and our story is very similar. We haven't been using it, I don't believe, as quite as long as the other two
Mhm.
companies here. But our BIM got started, I would say, like in August of 2025. So
Yeah.
and then we just recently, in November of 2025 is when we rolled out Oval with Civil 3D.
Okay.
So we haven't been in it too long, but very similar story. You know, our details were scattered amongst our network, and just the organization with bringing it into Vail, a single source, um, is a great solution, easy access, um, and you can see your benefit right off the bat just with that in itself. So we're really excited to expand upon it and continue using it. Yeah,
Fantastic. Thank you.
you bet.
Yeah, those are great. I think, yeah, there's certainly a commonality there, right? Scattered content and bringing it into a kind of centralized interface, which is awesome. I'm going to turn it over. We're kind of moving to the next phase. We're going to talk about strategy and outcomes, right? It's going to be the meat of the show and tell. So I'm going to send it back to you, Rebecca. Talk a little bit more about kind of once you got in there, once you started to look at the content, how did you decide to structure those things? When you're with Avail, it's you're kind of balancing, okay, you've got this content, you want to organize it, you want to create channels, and there's ways that you can create key cards and tag the content, all different sorts of ways. So talk a little bit more about that strategy, and then your overall outcomes, right? That's what's driving this work, right? To be done. What kind of goals do you have in mind? What kind of outcomes are you hoping to achieve as you kind of present this and this roll this out to different teams?
Okay. Well, go ahead and start sharing my
Yeah.
screen here so I can sort of show you how we have things laid out, at least at the moment,
Mhm.
within Avail. So this is sort of our overall. So because our buildings group had already sort of set up a framework, we were sort of trying to follow along in that same vein, so that if there were people who were used to, sort of seeing things, how things were being done there, this would make sense.
Yeah.
We were also going with something so that'd be fairly similar to sort of the folder structure that people were relatively familiar with, that they've been working with for years as well. So we weren't trying to completely reinvent the wheel, but we wanted to make sure that it was going to be laid out in a very logical sort of way. So we have a channel specifically for civil, and we broke between those things. We broke it down so that we would have details and we would have blocks, so that people knew, sort of what sort of content they were going to be getting into once they got there. Then within those, it would just sort of depend on what group we were working with. So
Mhm.
our civil group, ties into a lot of different departments. So we started talking with the aviation group. They were one of our first groups that wanted to get on board with things. So we're like, great, get us some standard details. So I mean, there's definitely, a process before you can just
Yeah.
grab details and throw them in,
Right.
right? Like we really, people needed to be able to, like, okay, which details,
Mhm.
are they standard are they on the right
Yeah.
layer, are they at the right scale, and all of the things, right? Have they, been approved by the powers that be, all of those things. So I mean, all that sort of happens before, but once we were able to do that and be able to bring some in here, like immediately, the people who were able to get in and start using that, they were like sold, like done,
Mhm.
because immediately, like, you just do a search, we have our tags and things in there, but as you were showing, right, you don't have to know the exact word
Mhm.
that you're necessarily looking for in the title in order to be able to get the
Yeah.
thing, as long as it's in there. Or we've also started adding tags for things if it's, something that wouldn't be part of of that
Mhm.
content, so that you're able to tag the things that would be for a particular jurisdiction or client, or
Mhm.
something else that wouldn't necessarily be contained within just the detailed title,
Yeah.
or that. So but as far as the structure is concerned, as I said, details and blocks are sort of those broken down. So we've got a lot of those. We also worked with like their water group. So we've got their details in here now as well. And then blocks were sort of like the easy way in for
Mhm.
us, because we
Yeah.
sort of had those sort of fairly well standardized across the company already. So we were immediately able to let's just grab those, bring those in. That was an easy lift in comparison, in some ways, to the details. So we had those, and then we had some other things like we had some state blocks that we were using on our cover sheets. So we would show like the state block, and then we'd like, color in essentially like the county where the
Mhm.
project was going to be happening. So
And
we would be able to
Rebecca, not to
bring
cut
those in.
in, were you wanting to
Yeah.
share your screen?
Yeah, I thought I was this whole time. I will
Try
try
again, see
again.
if it's gonna click through.
Oops. Thank
There
you
we go.
for letting me know. I'm so sorry. I thought I was showing that whole time. I'll go back for just a
No, that's
moment.
great.
So this is our overall what everyone gets, and then within our Civil 3D channel, as I was saying, we broke it down sort of details versus blocks
Nice.
within here, and then within sort of like in an individual channel, what we're able to see now is so much better than we would be able to see if we were just having it pre-harvest. Like here are
Yeah.
details that are not harvested to give you a sort of an example of what we were dealing with before versus what you can get now. Like this sort of a preview. I'm like this that isn't helpful to
Yeah,
me,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Like unless the title tells me everything that I need,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna get much out of that versus this sort of a detail where as you were demonstrating before there, I'll do this one, it's easier to see. Like boom, like
Mhm. Yeah.
it's great. As far as other content, we have also started adding in some websites for different jurisdictions as well.
Yeah.
Um, so that if people are looking for detail, because a lot of the teams that we were talking with also said, well, we've got details, but usually the client wants us to use the latest version. So instead of
Yeah.
us having to house that latest version, let's just provide a link so that you can go get that detail.
Mhm.
If we need to customize it for the job, we can do it from there. So from here, you can just double click, and this works from within Civil 3D as well. So you can just click on it, load it up, and boom, there's your
Nice.
silt fence detail
Fantastic.
for what you need. So as far as what we would like to do more, obviously we want to put more content in here. We will continue to build all of these libraries out. But we'd also like to start making palettes for
Mhm.
specific like clients or really big jobs,
Yeah, yeah.
so that it's really straightforward for the users to be able to like, yeah, I'm working on this job or for this client. I can just immediately start grabbing those details or blocks and move on from there. So
Fantastic. That actually, I'm gonna tease something at the end of this webinar because we actually have some releases in preview, which are very soon to be released, and we're going to be adding some additional support for palettes in AutoCAD and Civil 3D. So the add-in that I was kind of demoing earlier, we're going to be getting that out into production, and so that you can take advantage of the palette functionality that you got in the desktop and be able to load those things from the AutoCAD add-in.
very cool.
That's great.
The only other thing I was going to mention was for the pipe catalogs.
Oh yeah.
When we put these in, we did do them per version year
Okay.
because our pipes are version specific, per
Okay.
version year. So we did make sure to put those in here so they are sorted that way, so that everyone can get access to whatever it is that they need. And it's so much easier being able to just click on this and load because Civil 3D doesn't always listen to what you tell it otherwise.
Right.
So yeah, that was it. That's all I had to share there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rebecca. That's a lot of work, right? It's a lot to think about, a lot of planning and discussions that are important, right, around this content management. I think the outcomes and the value really going to take effect for you all. Maya, I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell a little bit more about this kind of strategy, some of the discussions around organizing and structuring the content for LPA. And then yeah, kind of overall goals, outcomes that you're hoping to see, once this kind of continues to roll out to different teams.
Yeah. Thanks for handing it over to me. I'm going to share my screen to talk about the initial approach that we took. So coming into Avail with Civil, we already had kind of a file structure or a tree that we've set up when it comes to the actual folder.
Well,
Um,
one second, Maya. I don't think
I'm
it
not
shared.
sharing.
This must be a Zoom thing.
Oh, there we go. Is that right? Is that working?
Uh, Not
Share.
yet. Oh, there it comes. Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So as we've all kind of talked, our panel, as all of our panelists here have said that we've all started off of our like server locations, local file locations, and Avail came in and gave us like a place to house all that and reorganize. I think what was interesting is that most of the time you don't really take an approach in changing and reorganizing unless a new product is in front of you, and
Hmm.
Avail allowed us to do that. So as you can see, what I ended up doing, and I would suggest this for a lot of people, was I mapped out the entire folder structure of our content that we typically use. And I also told our landscape and our civil team that whatever content they want included, throw it in there and we will work it out. So as you can see on this top part, this was the current mapping, which was a little bit messy for how we wanted it to be.
Hmm.
And we took that and remapped it for how we would want it for Avail. And this gave us a starting point to start building out that structure, this tree structure in Avail without, it getting away from us as we add more content over time. Then as we go into Avail, what we do at LPA is we organize by discipline, and then we
Hmm.
separate each discipline has a content and a details folder. So what you're looking at right now is our entire Avail content library. I'll pull into Civil to see. So Civil, we have content, we have details. Typically, what we decided was content would be all of our templates and sheets, and details would be blocks. To get more granular, where we really took advantage was the keywords and the tags. As you can see on the bottom here in Avail, was beginning to kind of break out those keywords based off of the folder structure that we've provided
Hmm.
in our mural. Um, so that's kind of where we were really beginning to organize our content. I think the next step for us will actually be to go through and harvest all this stuff since we are still in the
Yeah.
testing phase.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously for outcomes, there are a few things that, is great. One thing is that the fact that if you pull up a drawing, like for example, the one I have open, you don't have to drag these into your tool palettes one by one. Rather, that you can go into your harvest list and run all these together, which saves a lot of time when it comes to content management and pulling things out of your drawings. I think the one thing that we're still working through is understanding the layer mapping. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's something we've talked about, Clay. So as we know, or for everyone on the webinar, if you pull up your settings file, you can say which insertion layer you would like for the
Hmm.
block. If you bring that block into a drawing, you would want the drawing to have the layers existing there and the
Hmm.
properties existing so that the
Right.
mapping works. So
Yeah.
one of the things that we'll be exploring potentially is like including that in our templates, but that wouldn't
Okay.
work necessarily for projects that already exist.
Right.
But
Yeah.
so that was just the one note. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
as for future purposes, just continuing to test this and see how we can use this with our teams. I know our
Mhm.
civil team is very interested in understanding how we can just go through and harvest everything and kind of get all that out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully I didn't
Fantastic.
miss anything.
No, that's
Maya,
great.
could you maybe one more add, Maya, if you can?
Yes. Uh-huh.
If I think that maybe the understanding of like pull palettes and avail and kind of where that came to LPA, if you
hmm
could kind of
Mm.
speak to that.
Yeah, so we had a discussion between our sites team, which is our landscape and civil team, about tool palettes, and it wasn't exactly something that they decided that they would move forward with just tool palettes. Mainly because tool palettes, just management of them is a bit difficult, especially the setup, because we have to give one owner that opportunity to set up the tool palettes, as well as including it in deployment and profile updates. So with that, that's where we had our sites team come to us and ask about Avail as an alternative. So at the moment, what we're looking at is both right now. It's a side-by-side exploration of Avail and tool palettes and how that can work for the teams. Hopefully that's what you were trying to cover,
Yep.
Corey. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I think it's a great story, great motivation, right? You know,
Mhm.
if a team comes to you and is looking for another alternative, right? And if you've got a platform that supports it, then that's awesome.
Yeah. Right.
All right, cool. Yeah, so one thing to point out is that there is a difference between, you know, Maya had mentioned the tool palettes in AutoCAD and the Avail palettes. So it's a similar naming convention, but our palettes are right now they're supported through the desktop. It's a way that end users can actually go through the library and collect content, you know, collect groupings of content, and they can create their own personal palette. That's going to be soon supported through AutoCAD and Civil 3D, but it is separate from that tool palette functionality. There's nothing that is talking to that tool palette in Civil 3D. Avail has our own functionality and feature called palettes, and it's just a way for users to group content. They can collect it, kind of create their own bucket of content, and then they can have that for a specific project or maybe for a specific client. And they can share that with others and kind of use it as a collaboration method as well. So I want to point that out. All right, fantastic. Let's turn it over to Christine at Larson Design. And Christine, I'll let you kind of talk about, yeah, you told your story, kind of introduction from Avail, but talk about your strategy, you know, organizing content, some of the tagging, key card structure that you've kind of put forth already, and then kind of the outcomes, right? Where you're kind of finding the true value of some of these workflows.
Okay. Let's see here.
And I would like
Well,
to call out Larson Design was our winner of Best Brand Identity for channel cards. So you can see a few here that they've created, but I did give one another shout out to the firm. We host a contest every year on channel card design and key card design, and they were chosen as the winners for our contest last year.
well, first off, hello, and like to thank Clay and Ron for reaching out and asking us to show what we're doing here at Larson with Avail and Civil 3D. So thank you both, Clay and Ron.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Sure. As I mentioned, or Clay mentioned, I'm Christine Palmisano with Larson Design Group, and I'm the Sim and CAD manager here. And I handle all things civil, horizontal civil side of things, which includes multiple groups like energy, water, wastewater, land development, federal, and everything within a full service AEC firm. You might be asking yourself, why am I sharing my job description with you? And what's that got to do with Avail? Well, it's a perfect description of how versatile Avail is. It's perfect for a single discipline job or company or a multidiscipline firm, AEC firm. You can cater it to your firm's need. You know, and uh, you're not you're not pointed into a structure designed by Avail. You don't have to use their specific structure. So you can use your own setup that you have already, or you can create your own new one. It can be catered to an electrical design firm. It can be catered to civil. It's so versatile. So that's one of the great things that I wanted to point out that makes it so nice to use. We'll take a high-level overview of our journey here at LDG into Avail with our civil libraries. I think I mentioned before, in August of 2025, we launched BIM with Avail and created our details and family libraries. And then in November of 2025, we launched our civil side with Civil 3D. And you can see all of the our libraries that we've created up here that I'm sharing. So our process of moving our details into AVAIL, we started with approximately like 1,200 details scattered all over our network. And so we published all the details and created approximately 20 categories, 20 subcategories, and we utilized AI, Copilot, and a few batch files to process all the details, bringing them into AVAIL. Then utilize the tag IO to break them down and group, and create tags and bring them back in. We then just had to decide on our layout and what kind of structure we wanted to create with our key cards. And I wanted something that was an industry standard and was easily could be expanded upon and was recognizable amongst all the departments and groups. So I came up with using the CSI master format. I don't know if everybody is familiar with that, but it was, let's see, I can pull it across here. It's a format that can be very simplistic. There's basically 50 divisions within it, and it's an industry standard. Sorry. So there's 50 divisions within it, and then in each division, it can be broken down even further. So for the civil side, I chose, just basically for existing conditions, earthwork, exterior improvements, and utilities. And then down the road to expand, if you wanted, oops, sorry. Let's say we under this division that we have a key card of 31, and we find out that we have tons of site clearing details. We could make a sub card that's 3110 site clearing, and you could dump all those details in there. So it's very easy to expand upon. It's an industry standard. It's simple, and that's what makes AVAIL, I think, very neat. Stuff's not buried, in a directory structure. It's simple to go to and find. And it's word searchable, which makes it even more accessible, I believe. So anyway, so let's take a look at our layout here. So we'll go over here to our civil library. We've grouped our channels up here. You can see our rivets are grouped together. All of our Larson channels, and then our civil is here together. And then I've broke this down into those divisions as I had mentioned there, based on the CSI master format. So let's say you're wanting to do a search. You can do it out here, and search all of these divisions. Or you could be completely out here, like Clay had mentioned, and you could search here for a manhole, and it's going to search all those divisions. You got 107 of them across there. Or you could go specifically, to yours here and do a search, and it will break it down. So now we've got 88. Or you can do a combination. You can go within those divisions that I've created and go to earthwork. And now we've got 30 of them, You can do a combination of it. Now we've got earthwork, manhole, and I don't know, let's put up here. precast. So now we got 10 down here.
Yeah,
You can
nice.
just keep, you can add to it a combination of it. So I've just sort of broken it down to it within the divisions in all these tags and keywords, with a combination, and made it easy so that we can add upon them, like I mentioned before.
Mhm.
So that was the idea. Wanted something easy, recognizable, industry recognizable that all departments could use, and make it easy to find, searchable, logical.
Yeah.
And that's sort of a high level overview of how we came to come to utilize the structure that we have in here right now. So
That's great. I think that's a
Yep.
unique way to think about it and to group that content. I think it's again, there's a lot of different ways that you could think about it, just depending on the content that you've got and the teams that are going to be utilizing it. But this is awesome. This is great.
yeah.
A quick poll. I know Christine, you said you had 1,200 details loose, out there. Maya, Rebecca, what's a rough number for you all that you were trying to kind of pull together?
Probably not quite that many, but pretty darn close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say
Yeah.
same.
Um, and that was sort of our problem was some of them are still valid and some of them aren't,
Yeah.
right? Some of them are
Yeah.
so old or so non-standard at this point that they're not worth the time necessarily to try to make standard before bringing them in. So there's an evaluation process of
Yeah.
the details
Mhm.
that and blocks that we have
Yeah.
prior to wanting to put them in.
Also on that, what we in addition did is create a like form URL in Avail for any new or
Oh,
content that
nice.
can't be
Yeah.
found so that
Uh-huh.
people can just get directed straight to the form, and then that populates a planner and then that
Yeah.
gets made. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the to build on what you were saying there, Mike, like it's really great to be able to sort of see like where our holes are. Like it's so much
Exactly.
easier to identify like what do we not
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
Mhm.
now that we can really get our heads wrap around what we actually do have,
Uh-huh.
Right.
which is nice as well.
Yeah, and the ability to make comments, have people be able to make
hmm
comments
Yep.
and
Oh, yeah.
flag details and say, um, it'd be great to have a modified version of this and a new,
Yeah.
standard detail.
Yeah.
That's a plus benefit.
Absolutely.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank each of you, Rebecca, Christine, Maya. I think these are great, really kind of interesting takeaways, right? I think there's a lot to glean from each of your strategies, and kind of how you've chosen to organize your content. And if it's a hurdle. It can feel insurmountable. I think maybe in the beginning, it's like, oh my gosh, if you're working with that much content and trying to kind of surface it and then actually review it is can be challenging. So thank you for highlighting your stories, your strategies, your outcomes with Avail and kind of the AutoCAD and Civil 3D workflows. I think you all kind of highlighted some really great use cases that I think will be very similar, right? And great ways for other firms out there to start to kind of brainstorm their own strategies, have those internal discussions, kind of how are we going to tackle this? What do we do first? How do we go about it? So yeah, thank each of you again for sharing your stories.
Thank you, Clay,
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Yes.
All right, so we'll check. Have we, Rob or Laura, have we received any questions or anything? I see a hand raised in the participants, so we can address that. But I didn't know if we had any questions pop up. Oh, we did have just one that popped up just now. All right, cool. This is one. It's from Paul. Can you harvest from multiple individual block DWGs in a folder rather than multiple blocks inside a DWG? Is that right? From Paul. Yeah. Can you harvest from multiple individual block DWGs in a folder rather than? So are you, Paul, are you talking about individual blocks that are not, I guess, maybe explain a little bit more of that, or rather if you wanted to, if you had an explanation there on kind of what he's explaining or kind of asking.
Rob, I think you're muted.
Yeah, your
No, his mic
not
is
coming
just up.
through.
Oh,
Yeah, we still can't hear you.
the
How
mic's
about
on
now?
top of your,
Yes, there we go.
Oh my goodness. Okay, sorry. By the way, the apps are released. They were released after you
Oh yeah,
started the webinar. Okay.
fantastic.
Okay. The answer is that we call that the loose content problem. So the harvest for AutoCAD and Civil 3D currently is designed to operate, as you noticed, Paul, with a bunch of blocks that are housed inside of a DWG container file. But we will support in the near future doing that for loose DWGs on your network. And what that really involves, it's not harvesting per se, it's just running those DWGs through the same processor pipeline where we generate the image preview and the OCR for the text search. And so that will be happening. We don't, I guess neither Clay nor myself know exactly when, but it's supposed to be soon.
Yes. Yeah, we've talked about that internally quite a bit, and it's something that firms have brought to our attention, right? Something that as we kind of dove into understanding AutoCAD content, right, where that lives, it's not always a block, right? They're not always like that. So being able to add some additional functionality where that loose content lives, being able to do some of the same processing, I think there'll be some huge advantages there. So that's something to look forward to, and we'll continue to send out messaging and kind of let you know once that becomes available down the line. Cool. All right, next question from Awash. Will the tag and filter and keyword search in the desktop version be added to the Civil 3D plugin as well? That's something that we've received feedback on as well. So with that add-in, I'll actually pull it up on my screen and share. So if I go to my channel view, you can see here, once I get into the channel, so you may have structured this, some of the things that Christine and Rebecca talked about is kind of creating these key cards on top of the content, which are basically like filters, right? So if you've grouped your content together in a channel, you can add these additional key cards, which is like just a visual filter on top of the content. So when they click into that, they can kind of choose their own adventure and filter down to content through a key card. So right now it's just you're getting the thumbnail visibility, which is really nice. It's a great way to kind of visualize kind of what you're looking at. And you can still do a full text search across the channel as well. That's all enabled, but having some additional ways that you can filter, not only sort the content, but filter it as well, I think will be something that we'll continue to kind of build out from this product down the line. And then all right, so the next question from Kirk. Is the add-in manager programmatically available? I'm working on a project startup where I'd like to pre-populate the drawing with the appropriate details based on a questionnaire at the beginning. So based on location, type of work, pre-populate the detail sheets.
So it sounds like a potential API access to our palettes.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can certainly follow up on that, Kirk, on kind of answering kind of your specific workflow, what you're trying to do there. But a lot of the comments and feedback that we've gotten from from Project Startup, there is a lot of workflows that are generated around those palettes and creating those palettes in the AVAIL desktop. And now, like Robin mentioned, we actually just released the release that supports palettes in our add-in, as you can see here. From some of the screen sharing that Christine and Rebecca and Maya had done, this was not available, this palettes feature. And so this is now live. This is something that you can go to download today, which is awesome. So we've actually added support for both personal palettes and organization palettes. And so organization palettes is actually a brand new concept. It's just an appendage to our personal palette structure. And so it's a way, again, that end users can go through the Avail library, and they can create their own palettes. They can share those palettes with teammates. And we've added a layer to those palettes, not just at the personal level for the individual, who can share it with other individuals, but be able to, as a publisher or kind of a channel admin, if you will, you can actually elevate that to the organization level. So it's a way to really kind of crowdsource, right? Have multiple users pull their own palettes together, whether they're working on a specific project, again, for a specific client, or maybe it's just kind of a collection of content that kind of makes sense. It's always going to be needed for a project startup. As a publisher, you can elevate that to the organization level, which kind of standardizes, and then you can share it out to everyone on your plan. You can share that to different groups that you may have created in Avail. And again, it's just a way that you can elevate those, put a little bit more, not restriction, but permissions around who manages that palette. Because with those personal, right, it can be anybody that can manage those and edit those. At the organization level, it's just that publisher will own it, and can continue to curate it, and to kind of revise it and add to that palette. But it's kind of elevated in a way for the organization. Christine,
Very
you had
nice.
raised your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to mention you might make note that out on the main dashboard, you can drag and drop. So you could still do
Oh, right,
all
yeah.
your, your searching and everything, even though you can't see it directly there in Civil 3D, you can do all your searching and everything out on your main dashboard and just drag and drop directly from there into Civil 3D.
Bring it in.
And even, I always have my main desktop on, so I see everything, all
Right,
my key
yeah.
cards and everything, and I drag and drop directly from there. So
Fantastic. All right. We'll double check to make sure that we've got any other questions. The new release, talk about that just a little bit more to close things out. So again, you can go to the Manage portal, which is app.getavail.com. And that's kind of where you can get access to these latest releases, right? So any of the palette specific support through AutoCAD and Civil 3D, as well as this organization palette functionality that's now available on the desktop in the Revit add-in, as well as AutoCAD and Civil 3D add-in. That's also going to include some ways that you can modify some of the block insertion settings. So we'll send out some additional communication on actually kind of where you can go in and you can actually right click on content and being able to edit insertion for the block settings. So normally this is something you would do at time of harvest, as you kind of extract these things and bringing them into Avail. But if you needed to go in and change something for a specific piece of content, we added this right click ability so that you can kind of manage that after the fact. And then we've also kind of improved some additional kind of host and cloud support through all the different add-ins and just some overall improvements across the desktop and the add-ins as well. So that's something to take a look at. You can actually just jump in there right away and get access to some of these things and start to test this out, right? It's all about reviewing that content, seeing what you have, bringing it into Avail so that you can surface it, visualize it, and then begin that process of kind of organizing it, kind of what's going to be best for your team. So let us know if you have any questions on this new release. Happy to set up a call with myself and Rob. We can have to talk about some of these new features and how you go about organizing some of this content. I did also want to do a couple other plugs. One, we are hosting Confluence in Seattle next week. So yeah, we're officially a week away. Confluence is a professional development event that we host, and this is kind of the first time that we're doing We typically do a fall event. It's 3 days here in Lexington, where we're headquartered. But this year we're expanding that to Seattle and Chicago. So we'll be hosting that in Seattle next week. If you need information on that, we've got that at confluence@getavail.com. You can check out and register there. And then Confluence Chicago is going to be right around the corner as well in May. We'll be hosting that at the SOM offices in Chicago. That'd be really great. So please check that out if you're interested. If you know someone in those areas that would like to attend, again, this is kind of an industry level discussion, it's a great way to kind of network and talk to other customers or kind of interact with your cohorts. Awesome. Cool. Well, that's going to wrap things up for this month's webinar. We'll get some information. We're already kind of planning kind of what's next for next month. So keep your eyes and ears open for some of that communication. But again, thank you to our panel today, Maya, Christine, Rebecca. We really appreciate you telling the story. I think it goes a long way. Again, Rob and I could sit here and we could tell you all the bells and whistles and buttons and clicks and things like that. But it's great to kind of have people who are actually doing some of this work, having these discussions, tell their story and ways that they're thinking about it. Because it's a question that we get all the time. It's like, how are other people doing it? What's the strategy? What are different ways that we can think about this? And I think you all kind of told really, really important stories and perspectives. And we appreciate you sharing.
Thank you
Thanks for having
Thank you
us.
so much.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for attending. And yeah, be on the lookout for our next webinar. And please reach out for any questions. Thank you all.